It took vision, it took execution, it took building a culture that, supported people, cared for our customers, and was just driven to do the right thing. And, they sound like simple things. It sound like every business should do that. Those basic things just weren't that common.
Hello, and welcome to Along the Way Life's Journey. I'm your host, Corr Buccellato. Let's get the next journey started. Hello, and welcome to Along the Way Life's Journey. Our guest today is a man I have known for many years. I've had the privilege of watching his meteoric growth and success. He is a graduate of Columbia University in New York, earned his MBA at Stanford University Business School in California. I'm talking of Jonathan Corr, of course, a skilled industry leader with 25 years experience in software and technology, a superb corporate strategist, highly skilled at acquisitions. He is the past CEO of two major companies, each of which he led to a multi-billion, that's with a B, billion-dollar sale. He therefore has been honored in building a unicorn, at least in his life. Jonathan has been married to his lovely wife, Ray, for 28 years, father of three amazing children, Rosie, 21, Zach, 18, and Eliza, 16. He is active in support of his faith and a pretty darn good golfer. Throughout my life, I've traveled millions of miles and I've met many, many people along the way. People who have had stories that inspired other people and brought them to a new place in their life. It certainly happened to me. I had many people give me inspiration and challenge me to be more than I think I could have been without that challenge. And I have benefited from it. We all have such stories. Our guest today is Jonathan Corr, who has lived a lifetime full of stories. He's a leader. He's been inspirational to many, many teams of people that he's led. And I'm sure you're going to find him very interesting. Jonathan, say hi to everybody.
Hey, everybody. And Carl, thanks for having me here. It's great to be online with you. It's been a long time. Obviously, we've known each other a long time. Very excited to be on and have a conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. Tell us a little bit about your background, Jonathan. We'll get into the business stuff and all the accolades. And, we know you won your various awards and you've been named this and that and everything else. And you're on a dozen different boards, or two or three at least at this time, which is all a measure of your success, and rightly so. You're a very successful guy. You've accomplished a great deal. Tell us a little bit about your background. Who is Jonathan Corr?
Who is Jonathan Corr? Well, I was just a young buck back in, grew up on the East Coast. I'm a Boston boy. I think a lot of people that have encountered me know that. They pick up a little bit of the accent. Rabid Boston fan, love the Celtics and the Red Sox and the Patriots. Even though there was a little bit of friction there between Belichick and Brady. The fascinating thing was, I grew up back there, had a brother, wonderful parents, and decided to go to college in New York City. You mentioned Columbia, because, I had my interests were math and science and didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. But it made sense. One of the most interesting things that occurred there that probably is one of, most of the, I've talked about this with people, my inflection points. I considered becoming a naval officer, and I received a naval ROTC scholarship, and I was all lined up to actually go to MIT with that scholarship. And 6 weeks later, I got a note from the Navy that they were taking the scholarship away because they discovered that I was low sublevel colorblind. Now, that is kind of a red-greenish, and you'd think, on a boat, you have to worry about the blue ocean. But there's a little more to it. But it was actually a quite, critical turning point because it sent me to Columbia. I didn't end up in the Persian, in the Gulf War, which I would have. and I probably would have never made it out and met my wife and had this incredible family out here in California. So, these things happen and you're disappointed, and, it's the way things are to be. So, I went to Columbia, operations research, did well. Professors liked me. They got me a gig to come out to international paper. And that was another interesting turn in my life, which is they pointed out these different locations in the middle of nowhere. Most paper mills are in Arkansas or, Alabama or et cetera. And they actually pointed out a place that was a printing facility, lithographic printing, out in Newark, not Newark, New Jersey, which most people know, but Newark, California.
Really? I never knew that.
Which was dead between San Jose and San Francisco, and right across the bay from Palo Alto and Stanford University.
Wow.
And I went out there and pretty much have been in California since then. I came out August of '89, just before the big quake. And I got my first real experience in business and managing people. I was helping them bring in technology, high-end digital technology for printing operations, printing labels and full-size posters of basketball players like Magic Johnson and others. And I was a 22-year-old kid that ended up managing 4 different unions, and the average age of the union worker was at least twice my own.
So you had to have some pretty good person skills.
Yes. And that was, again, it was an amazing opportunity, because it is what got me, I think, into Stanford University Business School. I had a very different background than many others who had been doing consulting or banking. I was someone that had managed groups of people, had dealt with contracts and unions and dynamics. And I brought that as something unique to the Stanford Business School class, which is a very difficult university to get into, but yes. I only applied there. Now, people would say, well, that's arrogance. And I said, well, no, that's not actually arrogance. I had just gotten married, and my wife was the head of marketing for 24 Hour Fitness. And she said, we're not moving back east to go to Harvard or Penn. You could apply to Stanford. And I luckily got in.
So basically what you're telling me is God has a way of being quiet about things, but guiding you along different places.
It guided along the way. Yeah, I think. And, I was in the tech business for a number of years prior to joining Ellie Mae, where you and I have had a relationship there for almost 20 years. Right. I had the good fortune of working in a number of technology companies. I was at Netscape. I was the product manager for the browser, the leading browser, until Microsoft decided to crush us like a bug. And so, it was not a fun experience going from a 75% share to much less than that, but it was a learning experience, and it was stuff that I pulled into business in the future, not necessarily the behavior, but knowing how to make moves and move pieces on the chess table. Did some other startups in Silicon Valley, like many others, and I ended up going to work actually for a bigger company after that run of small startups that had been successful during the dot-com boom and bust. And I really did enjoy it. I was at a very large tech company. I found it to be way too bureaucratic for me, political, wasn't focused on building great products and, making customers, say, wow. And I was looking for something a little bit more venture-backed and fast-moving. And I stumbled upon Ellie Mae and Sig Anderman, who was quite a gentleman, still is, one of my greatest mentors. That was the beginning of an incredible ride at Ellie Mae that, I could have never imagined that we would go from a company with 50 people and a few million in revenue to ultimately $1 billion revenue company. And as Dan Rubin, one of our former venture capitalists, said, a decade unicorn.
You know, you may not know, but the very first podcast I did, my first guest was Sig Anderman. And I could not have started this kind of approach to a show like this without Sig Anderman, my longtime friend. And during that show, I made it clear that his title was he was a unicorn builder. Because in the world of Wall Street, a unicorn is a specific company that grows from very little beginning to a giant over $1 billion valuation. And I made it very clear on that show. While Sig was the heart, you were the arms and legs. You're the one who made it grow.
Yeah, it's interesting because unicorns, and when we became one, and even when we had no dream. I mean, we had no idea that we would get to that. I remember us sitting there and setting targets. We're going to be 40 million in revenue by X. We wrote it down on paper. We did, variety of things. Being a unicorn was a big thing. There weren't a lot of them. Today, if people listen, you hear about a lot of private companies that are unicorns. But, in my opinion, the markets are very inflated right now.
Absolutely.
And so it was an exceptional thing. We just it was miraculous. And as you said, it took vision, it took execution, it took building a culture that supported people, cared for our customers, and was just driven to do the right thing. And they sound like simple things. It sounds like every business should do that. But it's pretty amazing along the way as I've talked to people and onboarded every new employee that ever joined Ellie Mae. Sig and I used to do that, and I welcome people and tell the story, and how those basic things just weren't that common. Not to say that it was unique in our business, but it wasn't that common in other businesses.
And it certainly built loyalty among the staff and the employees. I was on your board. We were many, many people on your board who were involved with dozens of major companies across the country over probably a span of 40 or 50 years that we preceded you. And I must say that on the board, it was really a love fest. This was a really unusual environment to find the kind of support and belief that the board had in you and in Sig and the team, because we could see what was happening below your level in the employees, in the groundwork there, how people were as loyal as can be. They worked their tail off because they believed in you and they believed in the vision that you gave them. And you helped to guide them and support them and move them in directions. I know one young fellow, I won't mention his name now, but you may, but I won't mention his name now. But he was just an apprentice, a high school kid when he came to work for us. And you know what I'm talking about.
Well, I used to kid I used to kid that he just came from kindergarten, but that's okay.
Looked it. And he became a major player with the company. And I said to Sig that I grew up in a neighborhood in Brooklyn where half the neighborhood was Italian and half the neighborhood was Jewish. So half of them called people like him and like you a stand-up guy. Half of them called him a mensch. What it meant was somebody you could rely on, somebody who was there all the time. And you certainly are. You certainly are. And you helped to grow that environment with your people. Yeah, you have to be proud of that.
Thank you, Carl. And, we talk about Sig. It was kind of very interesting. He and I had, various run-ins and friction points along the years. There's a story he likes to tell that I think is interesting, but it's a reflection, I think, of myself and him, and just the dynamic at Ellie Mae, which was, he had asked me to come on, and I was the tech guy. He had a vision in the industry, and he wanted me to build a solution that was kind of similar to what was the incumbent. And I spent a bunch of time in the field talking to customers and prospects and so forth. And I came back after 4 or 6 weeks and said, I don't think it's the right thing, Sig. And he says, you don't know, Jonathan. I'm the guy in this industry. I know this stuff. You're just a tech guy. You just build things. You don't know. I said, okay, I'm going to go back out. I'm going to spend time. I went out, back out another month, whiteboarding, talking to people. Came back, saying, I tell you, you're wrong. Respectfully, right? This is what I'm hearing out there. And, I've always learned that you can't assume you are the customer. You have to listen to the customer and internalize and figure out what they're saying.
Right.
And so I said, it isn't going to work. It's not going to work. And we kind of got into it. And I said, Sig, you know what? If you don't want me here, I can leave. You can fire me. I'm okay with that. So we're back and forth a couple of times. Finally, he said, and I give him credit here because, again, I was this young new guy. He had the experience, but he had the foresight to see that I had the passion and the vision, what I was seeing out there. Say, okay, just do what the hell you want. And that was basically the beginnings of our flagship that changed the industry, Encompass.
So you may not know this, but when we had this small group of guys that he would talk to all the time, the trio, Craig and Rob and myself and Sig, we get together and we talk about these things. And when that happened and he said that you were convincing him that you were more right than he, and we looked at him and he said, he's smart as hell. We got to listen. He's smart as hell.
And, obviously it worked out very well. But it went back to, again, it was listening to the customer, reacting, responding. And, I think our culture of being like that, where basically he set that foundation. I mean, it is so much a part of who he is, right? He told me he's starting to think about writing a book called The Power of Nice, which I think is just so apropos for him. Yeah. But I used to say it's not that we're nice to everybody. It's that we respect people, right? Because we Pollyannish about it, but there's respect. Yeah. And when we went through the mortgage meltdown, the Great Recession in 7 and 8, that could have killed us. It could have crushed us. It crushed a lot of companies. Yeah. And it was probably the hardest thing we ever did, to step back and say, we've got to make an adjustment in the business, take some of our teammates out, which is, so difficult to do, but it would be the strength of the company going forward. And what the company came out on the other end was still focused on automating everything automatable in the industry, but it looked very different. We were a compliance-oriented company, and we were focused on lenders rather than brokers. But it was all about, having that environment where our team figured it out. And, it just, it's remarkable. There are so many stories like that. And it goes back to these basic tenets of being focused on the customer, listening to them, supporting our employees. And because we were a company that cared, giving back to our community. And it, in many ways, it's what attracted people to us. Right. And, it's if I can give anybody, it's a magic formula, which doesn't seem that complex, but it works.
No, giving back is a wonderful thing. You can never outgive, you and I both read the Bible, and I know that you know this, that you can't outgive. When you do something for other people, it always seems to strengthen who you are, and some way or another comes back along the way to you, I believe that. I know that you and your family practice your faith, and you're very strong in your local community there, and you're the president of your group, and those are the things that busy men don't often find a way to do, but because you believe in it, you do it. And practice makes you a good golfer, but it makes you a good man also when you do other things, Your wife, Ray, and you have enjoyed music in your house for many years, I know. Do you still do that? Do you still have a chance to do it?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, yeah, I know. We've talked about, yeah, the karaoke.
Yeah.
My kid, well, in particular, my two of my daughters love to perform. Actually, my oldest is the double major down at the Claremont schools in Southern California, Pomona College, double major in theater and economics,
Oh, wow.
which is, quite a combination. But I think she's thinking about the business of the arts. She's a performer, and she has been since she was in middle school and musicals and so forth. And my younger daughter, similarly, not as much. And my wife enjoys it, and I kind of go along with it. I don't sing well, but I do one song that is my signature. Actually, everybody at Ellie Mae used to know it because they used to get me up and do it at different occasions. I would do "Wild Thing" by the Troggs, the original, right? But yeah, we have our karaoke here, and we have fun with that, and my son is a big time into guitar. He has 4 different guitars now. He's decided he's going to learn trumpet, so he's been teaching himself trumpet for the last 3 weeks. And I've got my keyboard, my piano here in my office. So
Wow.
I find it very therapeutic. I think it's very relaxing.
I love it. We do too. As you know, we have a karaoke here, and we love to make music. And every time guests come to the house, and we bring them into the big bar room, and we have a huge room for a bar, and in there's the karaoke hooked into an 80-inch television screen, and they invariably say, "What's that?" And when I say it's karaoke, they go, "Oh, I don't sing." Until you put the microphone in their hand, then they won't let it go. It's wonderful. I find that a very beneficial part of life, to be able to relax and enjoy and make music. I love every bit of it. And whenever my kids are over, "Wild Thing" is often sung, but not by you, by one of my sons. He loves "Wild Thing."
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's all about attitude.
Yeah.
And it can be more spoken than sung to some degree.
That's right. Yeah, I'm an old-fashioned crooner. I do different kinds of songs.
Yes, you are a good singer. That is for sure.
Thank you. So you're into now, you're quasi-retired. You're on a couple of boards, which means that you're helping to guide additional companies into greater places. So there's that kind of a future. Anything else that you're working on or looking at that you're involved in or thinking about?
Again, I'm on a few boards. I'm advising separately a number of different CEOs that are entrepreneurs, and I've been involved in investing in some different funds that are more active than passive, where basically they're venture or private equity funds, but I'm actually part of it, looking at some of the stuff and doing some diligence, and so it's enjoyable. And as I said to you, I've been trying to get our synagogue to think strategically about the future. So I'm running them through a strategic planning process and thinking about how there's a strong foundational Jewish community in this area well into the future. And then, with the rest of my time, I'm just enjoying things like golf and playing piano. I used to play when I was a kid. I've been playing more. I've been doing some courses on music theory, and
Oh, nice.
it's kind of nice. It's a nice combination.
So do you ever go to a local club and just join in and jam?
I'm not that good yet.
I find over the years, the more people drink, the less good I have to be. So I wanted to just mention one thing to you with what you're doing with your synagogue. I belong to a group here in Florida, and it's the National Christian Foundation. And it's the group that we utilized when we developed our charitable trust. We put money into the trust, they manage it, we get a tax advantage out of the thing, and then they manage it and it grows in different ways. And one of the ways that they've just recently introduced for the members of the community, they have a luncheon and they invite people in to be informed about local businesses that need support, both with mentors, but some financial support to grow their businesses,
Mhm.
employ more people, generate more revenues that then go back into the trust so you can do it over and over again. And you might, if you're interested in knowing more about how that works, I'll get you a format. It might work perfectly for you for your group.
It sounds a little bit like the PRI, where you're basically giving out a bit of a loan
That's
to
right.
local businesses,
That's right.
and it helps your charitable funds go further.
That's right.
Yeah.
And what it does is it provides the local community an opportunity to grow without having to be involved with hawks, and
Mhm.
just get a real chance to get a footing on the ground and build more jobs that way. I know my particular situation with the trust that we set up. We put a X amount of money into it. We took our tax write-off, and over the last year and 2 years, we gave away personally about 20% of what we put into the trust. But because the way the trust managed it, there's about 15% in there now, about 15% more than I started with. So it's pretty good. People get
Good.
benefits that way.
Well, that way, you can benefit more. You can benefit
That's right.
more.
Right. And let's face it, to whom much is given, much is expected. We've been very blessed in our lives.
Evan.
We,
Yep.
we really should help
Yeah.
others wherever possible. So, is there any particular person or event that took place in your life other than, the miraculous change from the East Coast to the West Coast and being relieved from being in the Navy? Is there any particular person you'd like to mention that affected you? Other than Ray, of course. I'm sure she's the greatest influence in your life.
No, obviously, I've mentioned Ray. I've mentioned Sig, who's been a
Right.
huge impact to me. I recently mentioned to you my dad. I did his eulogy in July, and my dad was a brilliant guy, super smart, not a very emotional guy. So as I said, when I shared, I said, I don't remember him ever saying, "I love you," until my daughter was born, his granddaughter. Um, but the interesting thing is, I knew um, that he loved us. He spent the time. Um, he he was well respected by his uh, his colleagues. He was a very tough man. He mellowed in his age, but I think one of the things that he always had, and it's carried through with me, was this honesty and integrity. He was somebody. He had fought, didn't fight. He went to Vietnam. He was an officer in Vietnam. He says he was very fortunate. He was never on the front lines. He was an officer of the Corps of Engineers, built all kinds of bridges in Cameroon Bay. Um, came back, was uh, probably one of the first folks that got into what they call dirty water, like helping get dirty water clean. And it actually, the Corps of Engineers, I don't know if people know, was the precursor to the EPA, right? They were the foundation of it.
Yeah.
And so he was involved very much in those early years. But I remember his colleagues saying, your dad's a bit of a uh, jerk. And that's the nice way of putting it. But he's our jerk. He's our jerk, because they knew, even though he was not an emotional guy, that he was tough on the edges, that he would do anything for someone he respected, that he was a man of his word, high integrity, high honesty. And he really influenced me in kind of the individual that I was growing up. And as I became an adult and a father, and the one thing that I did that was very different than him is, I've always told my children and my wife every single day, I think, that I love them. And I don't fault him for that, but it's these two things that he influenced in me, which was the honesty and the integrity and so forth. And being a man of your word, but also something he didn't do that I now do.
Yeah. There's something about that generation that found it difficult to speak those words, even though they lived them. I don't know whether it was inbred in them from their parents who had lived so much harder lives and they couldn't say it, but
Yeah, I don't know.
but they lived it.
He lost his dad when he was 15, and my nana was a tough lady. So, I don't know. Maybe it was those combinations.
Yeah. But he was blessed. He came home and he raised a family, and he obviously gave you a legacy to follow because all the years I know you, that's the man you are. That's who you are.
Thank you.
And I hope you're passing that. I know you're passing it down in example, but I hope you're passing some of the stories down in legacy to your children too, because these are things families need to know.
Yes.
They shouldn't be lost. Jonathan, is there any last thing you'd like to say to anybody before we close this?
It was interesting. I was speaking at a group of employees at one of the companies I'm on the board of, doing a fireside chat with the young CEO. And they asked me, one thing that I would share. And I said, the one thing that I would say is, when you're in business, it's like you have to step back and think about things in terms of all the colleagues there are trying to do the right thing, right? They're there for a purpose, a shared vision, but invariably things get challenging, right? It's kind of like I used to talk about, rowing and how you try to row in a shell, and you're all trying to go together, but sometimes you get tired and there's environment and so forth, and things break down. And you got to figure out how to get back aligned. And the easiest way to do that, right, when you have that friction, because everybody's smart, everybody's trying to do the right thing, is just always assume best intention, right? Because the fact is, we're human. We end up reacting to things. We end up, thinking somebody's doing something for some particular reason. But in all intentions, it's probably because we have a gap in communication. But if we always go back to think about best intention, it kind of smooths things out a bit.
Yeah.
And gets you back online.
Yeah, I agree with that. We unfortunately seem to be in a world where people are expecting the worst from others instead of the best. And that's a sad thing. We should realize that we're all born in this world the same way. We go out the same way. And in between, we have an opportunity to either be gentle with each other or be idiots. And I prefer to be gentle with each other. And I know you do as well. Well, I'm so glad you came to join me today. I've really been missing you. You're one of those people in my life that I feel proud of. I don't say it as a possession because I did very little in support, but I did watch you grow over many years and become a tremendously successful human being in life, not only financially, but who you are as a person.
And you definitely had a little bit of influence there, I'd say.
Well, un poquito. Thank you so much for being on the show. So let me just close out, and then we'll close for the session over here. I have to do the mandatory things. So thank you very much for joining our podcast today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it resonated with you. It certainly did with me. I know that Jonathan has been an inspiration to many, many people, and I'm sure he touched you as well. I'm sure that one of the key features that he's leaving with you is tell someone you love them today. It's very essential. Tell someone you love them today. So we're going to go on today, and I want to remind everyone who's watching the show, if you have anyone that you know or even yourself that you'd like to recommend as a guest on the show, Send in some information on your background and your bio. I promise I'll look at it. You can click it on my website. All the usual stuff for how to reach Jonathan and myself will be in the show notes. Easy click on where you can reach everybody. So I thank you all for being along the way today and joining in this. And remember, everybody has a unique story. You have a unique story, as do I. Write it down. Tell it to someone. Make it become your legacy before it's lost. God bless you all. Bye-bye. Thank you for tuning into the show. I hope that it resonated with you. It certainly did with me. And I hope it encouraged you to realize the true power of your story. As a reminder, new episodes will be released Wednesday mornings on your favorite podcast apps and also on YouTube as well. Be sure to like, subscribe, and turn your notification button on to ensure that you receive updates on new episode releases. I'm grateful for your reviews and your support. The love is certainly felt. Keep it coming. You can reach out to connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, or stop by my website to everypageatturning.com. All links are clickable in the show notes for quick access. Do you think that you or someone you know may be our most inspiring guest yet? Let's hope so. Click on our contact page and get in touch on my website and share your story. I look forward to reading each one personally. My best-selling book, To Every Page a Turning, which was published by Mascot Books, is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, and many more popular book retailers. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Till next time, remember that every day is a new opportunity to write your new page in your incredible journey. And it is incredible. You're the only one who has it.